Amie, I appreciate you joining me here at the Christian Post to talk about a number of topics, but you are going to be part of a major event coming up. It's called Unmasking Gender Ideology. It's going to be at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and that is coming up on September 24th. We'll talk about that event, but I want to also get into your organization, Women to Women, and there's so much here to unpack. This issue of the transgender movement and how it has affected women in prisons. This is something a lot of people don't know about, haven't thought about. So before we move into all those different junctures, tell us a little bit about Women to Women.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. The Christian Post has been really kind since our, first connection. Um, in 2021, we created Woman to Woman because we wanted to make like a resource hub for women coming home from prison. Because there's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of resources that are our resources are limited, but they're hard to find. So it makes it even more complicated. So we wanted them to be readily available for the people they're appropriate for. And at the very exact same time, the implementation of SB 132 started in California, which is the Transgender Respect Agency and Dignity Act. And this law was written and passed during the COVID lockdowns. So I was unfamiliar with it. Um, most people, except for the authors and the supporters, hadn't heard of it. And I started getting phone calls, messages, emails from women I hadn't even met before that were distraught. Um, it was just an overwhelming uh, sense of impending doom. Women were saying, "Amy, there's men here," and I didn't understand what they meant. So I read the bill, and the language, it was just exquisitely written so that there was no way women could have access to any kind of safety or well-being. So we shifted gears, and this became, you know, our focal point. This is what we had to take care of before we can move on to anything else.
So
Which
can I pause there for a minute, because I think this is the piece of the puzzle. It's so important for people to understand the laws, the regulations that are not only proposed but enacted in their local communities, in their states, in the nation as a whole. Because what you're referring to here, and correct me if I'm wrong, for those who don't know, is the fact that this law enabled biological men who identified as female to enter into prisons based on their identification, personal identification, not on their biology. So when they said to you, there are men here, they very literally meant there are men in these prisons with us.
Yes, there are no other requirements in this legislation or the other laws nationwide. All you have to do is self-identify. There's no requirements for hormone replacement, reassignment surgery. It's just on you walking up to any staff member now, not even a mental health clinician, and saying, I'm a woman or I'm non-binary. And then the process starts for you to go to committee and transfer.
So, okay. So and I want to, there's so many questions I have for you on this, and you're going to be addressing a lot of this obviously at the event. But when you're dealing with somebody who is spiritually, mentally ill, who is a rapist, let's say, who is a person deeply lost, and they just want to go into a woman's prison, all they would have to do as a man is to go up to somebody and say, I identify as a female, and they would be welcomed in essentially to the female prison.
Yes. Yes, and I was really angry. I was functioning on such a high level of unbridled anger, and it took years for me to finally understand this isn't gonna get fixed if I hate these people. And, it took some, like, serious one-on-one and, actually developing relationships with some of these gentlemen in order to be at the place where I am now. Uh, but the way this law is written, you cannot base a denial on someone's physical attributes, criminal history, or what else? I mean, that's terrible enough. That's everything that you would think you would be able to use to deny someone's access, but you can't. They have access to everything. The mother infant program, everything.
So, okay, before, and I have a number of questions about specifically how this is translated into real life and the impact this has had on women in prisons, because this is a population of people, prisoners, we do not often think about in culture. We do not think about in our society. We forget. And your organization, Woman to Woman, was founded to not forget, to engage, to help. What was it for you personally? Because I think this will help us as we dive deeper into the understanding of this, that made you want to create this organization. Just to pull back a little bit, what was the impetus for you?
There there were no programs anymore anywhere that were specifically centered around women and women's needs. Everything was shifting, uh, to be for not men. It wasn't for women, these were services for everybody else. And even organizations with the word woman in their name were no longer exclusively helping women. And I figured, it's okay for me to start Woman to Woman because everybody has their own groups for their own demographics, their own special needs. It shouldn't be an issue if I start a group for women. And it was a huge issue. It was a huge issue. There was so much pushback even from my own community. There were people that said I was putting my life in grave danger. I was making a really bad decision. I had no idea how political this was, and I didn't. I really didn't think this was anything but a human rights issue. And I was just devastated to find out that this had been politicized and monetized.
So you start this law is passed. You start shifting gears to address this. What did you start hearing from women in prisons? Here they are, they're serving a sentence, and there's already vulnerability in that, right? They're dealing with the situations they've gotten themselves into, they've landed in, but now you have biological men coming into these prisons. What was the direct impact on women?
Well, it was split. It was 50-50. There's some women who crave male validation, and that's why they're there. I knew that that is exactly what was going to happen. Toxic relationships started immediately, as expected. Um, Everyone was having sex everywhere. Uh, Women were traumatized because whether you're an active or willing participant in these acts or not, there's no honeymoon suite, so there is no privacy there. These are 8-person cells. So whether you like it or not, you're going to hear, see, you're going to experience this. Um, there's also the fact that in California, 92% of incarcerated women are survivors of, some form of abuse. What they've been battered, they've been beaten, and these are the same kind of people that they're getting away from or that they're in prison behind. So the re-traumatization has been overwhelming. People are really starting to display symptoms of complex PTSD because they're in the same trauma that originally traumatized them. They were being completely gaslit. You know, Imagine writing an inmate complaint about someone putting their private on you, and it's crossed out by staff, and they crossed out his and replaced it with hers. Um, So just completely override the fact that you were extremely uncomfortable and you were sexually assaulted, for political correctness. All of a sudden, they started talking to me about well, we're cis women. I said, What? What? Who told you you were cis?" And they said,
Wow.
they started using that word in college. My professor, the indoctrination process is grassroots all the way to prison. They're pounding this into their heads. People in school would call me crying, saying, they're making me feel stupid for being a Christian. What am I supposed to do? So they're being bombarded by satanic influence from every single angle, and every group. It seems like every NGO, everybody who has permission to go in there on a regular basis is pushing this, telling them to be more tolerant, to be accepting, to not be transphobic, to not talk to me, all kinds of stuff like that. So they're very limited as far as support goes. And
So are they being forced to change in front of biological men, to dress, I mean, you think about showers, you think about all the things that you have to do in a prison. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
yes, in the biggest women's prison in California, their showers and toilets are in the cells. So, these are 8 people that are sharing a really small space, and you have to get ready for work in the morning just like everybody else does. So you are some people will try and change their clothes in the shower or in the toilet, but it really normally doesn't work like that. You just get dressed where your bunk is. Showering, there is very limited privacy. There's a stainless steel door with a big cutout from, the chest up and from the knee down. And it was specifically designed for women. This is a women's prison. So things weren't designed for somebody who's 6'4" to not be able to see you completely naked in the shower. Same with the toilet. Um, in CIW in Chino, it's communal showers. So there's literally no privacy. Um, there were some incidents as soon as, the transition started, and, people were putting mirrors on the ceilings so they could look down at the neighboring, individual. It's very uncomfortable. In the federal prisons, it's even worse. All they have is a dirty shower curtain to separate them from, you know, convicted sex offenders.
Wow. I mean, as you're describing all of this, I think a rational person hears this and they say to themselves, how did we get here? Why are we here? What led to this? Why is this something that we're tolerating? What do you tell people when they ask you that?
This has been in the works for decades. This has been on the books, on the record for a long time. I'm finding documents that get older and older. At first, it was 1993, then 1970, then the 50s, where they're focusing on getting this done and established in prison because it's so much easier to establish this kind of, shift in thinking and living in a prison because nobody's paying attention because this isn't generally something people care about. So if you pass this and you make it work inside of a prison, you shut all these people up, it's that much easier to implement this in the free world. Um, it's like a giant science project.
And and these people are I don't care what people think about how they ended up in prison. These people are the perfect, and I say that in tragedy, victims because they're trapped in
Mhm.
a prison and these things are being foisted upon them. And you mentioned this before, but when they go to get help, when they go to report it, does anybody take it seriously? Or is the fear of the government, because this was enacted by the state government, does that supersede any ability for them to seek help? And I would imagine, by the way, just before you answer that, have we seen pregnancies? I mean, I would assume there are other issues coming as a result of this as well.
There are pregnancies. There have been pregnancies. Um, And, there's really when you get to prison, they tell you you have no more consent. No means no, and yes is not allowed. So in my brain, I think everything is rape because if you no longer have the right to consent, then you can't do anything. But there is sexual assaults. Um there's actually I got a phone call immediately after the first one, not the first one, but the first one by this person that was reported, and I called the prison, I emailed the warden, I let them know this is an issue. You can really take care of this right now. You can deem this person a danger to the community, the entire population there, and you can have them removed, please, please, please. Within 24 hours, this person raped another individual. Uh, the district attorney in the county had that person removed and sent back to men's prison. But I can't even really be mad at that person because they're only doing what a predator would do. It's our state legislature that is allowing for this and encouraging this to happen. And when the women make reports, the only thing they really want to hear about is staff sexual misconduct because there's a bunch of payouts and settlements that go with that. So if you continue to demonize the staff and hyper focus on that, then we don't have to worry about the transgender issue, and they can continue making money off of the grants and funding that they get from, pushing this lifestyle on everybody, whether they like it or not.
You know, Amie, I just want to remind people we're having this conversation. There's a major event coming up from the Christian Post called Unmasking Gender Ideology. You will be speaking at that event along with other wonderful people. It's September 24th in the evening at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. If people want information on that to get tickets, they can go to event.christianpost.com. I want to come back to something here before we wrap up because this is really important and people are going to hear you speak about all of this and more. right now there is a shift in the country when it comes to the transgender issue more broadly. The Trump administration coming in has brought with it many changes. Do you see any positive trajectory on this issue, specifically women in prisons and the victims that they've become as a result of this, as a result of the new administration?
No, unfortunately, there's so much pushback from the states, and this is such a unfortunately overlooked and underserved sector of the population that it just even with the executive order, it hasn't even made a dent in this issue. And there has to be, for some reason, we always have to have a loser in every political, game, and it's incarcerated women again and again and again. Um, I think it's going to take a huge shift as a society as a whole to just care about these people. From a Christian perspective, we pretty much hate people in prison, and I get it. I get it. These are not desirable folks that you want to, have a picnic with or something. But um, we have to remember them and love them, even the perpetrators, even the people that are trans identified. Because if we're not making moves out of love, this is just not going to work.
Well, and when you look at where we are right now in our culture in general, we know from the Christian perspective, Christians are called to pray for those who persecute them, clothe their enemies, feed our enemies. All of these things are biblical commandments. And so not that people in prison are our enemies, but the point is, regardless of how you feel about not just the people who are victims here, but also the perpetrators, it is never too late to change your heart and find Jesus. And you got to be praying for that. And you got to we're called again, not to just serve those who we like or who we love. We're called to serve everyone. And so you're doing that so beautifully with your organization. Now, people can go and get tickets again, event.christianpost.com. Where can people go for more information on your organization?
They can find us on any social media platform, Woman II Woman, or you can visit www.womaniwoman.org.
Well, I thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today. This is an important conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Again, it is Unmasking Gender Ideology. It's September 24th at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church in Florida. You can head over to event.christianpost.com for tickets and information. Thanks again.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more Christ-centered journalism.